Who's already resilient? Who's resilient here? Oh, come on. I mean, you bounce back from failures, right? Quickly. You thrive in the face of challenges. Yeah? How many of you have had a failure professionally? All you lot with the hands up. You're the winners. You're the winners. You want to be in my next venture? Please, yes. You are the lucky people that have had this great experience. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a lecture about performance and resilience and the link between the two. A big part of resilience is how you handle failures. How many people, I know some of you already plan to be founders, to found a business straight after your MBA. Who's that? Some. And who is definitely not going to be a founder? Okay, so who's on the fence? Now, I do not know by the end of this talk whether you will have gone one way or the other, but I do intend to give you a lot to think about so you can make that decision with your eyes open, decide whether founding is for you. Right, my name is Katy Tuncer, and I am a serial founder. Now, I founded 9 ventures so far, and Simon has asked me to talk about the truth of these 9 ventures. So welcome to my performance analysis lab. Welcome to the truth. So of my 9, 2 I would classify unambiguous success, okay? First one, and the unambiguous success ones get a shot of this magical potion. Okay, so unambiguous success number 1, McKinsey spin-out boutique consultancy. That look good? Yeah. McKinsey scaled globally, made lots of money. I had a good exit. Okay. Second success is my current venture, actually. I would call Horizon 37 an outstanding success. So in this one, transforming innovation leadership. We're scaling. We've got year-on-year growth over 9 years, continual profitability, multiple acquisition offers, it happens. So I'm going to give that another green one. Fair? Second success. Woo! There we go. Go me. Yeah? Done. That's the end of the lecture last year, right? Okay. I'm now going to give you 2 more. You want to hear about the 2? So these were made money. Important. Made money, do not exist anymore, and did not scale. So we give those this magical potion here, okay? The second venture is called Proper Exercise in Pregnancy. Simon alluded to my large family. I do have quite a lot of experience in pregnancy, yes. Series of DVDs, really high ranked on Amazon. We did really well, great following, lots of success. Doesn't exist anymore, partly because somebody nicked our copyright and ripped off and sold on Amazon, but partly because, well, it's DVD business. So give that a yellow, okay? Yeah? Next one. And my next one that I'm going to give a yellow is another boutique consultancy that I set up dedicated to the sports sector. So we did a lot of really interesting, iconic work with the Olympics, with the FA, big global impact. However, myself and some of the other founders found other more interesting things that we wanted to pursue. So that no longer exists either. So again, that yellow. Fair enough, but we did make money. Okay, that's where I got so far. So how do you think, what do you think now? Okay, should I stop there? That's not what you came for. What about the other 5, I hear you say? And you guessed it. These ones are going to have the red treatment. Now, on this, I can spin you a story, and you will have heard lots and lots of stories where you had a failure, but you came out of the ashes and it was all great in the end and it was all fine. And that's called denial. There's another mistake we can make, which is despair. So I'm not going to do that either. Would you like the clear truth about these other 5? The red treatment. Okay. So we've got Ready Steady Mums. Ready Steady Mums, a virtual personal trainer. Oh my God, it was so cool. So my college next door neighbor was a comp ski. I did nat ski. and we made this amazing platform. You should have seen what it did. Absolutely incredible what mums could do. I might talk a little bit more about that later, but we did not manage to make it financially viable. So even though I can tell you all sorts of good things that happened, failure, lost all our investors' money. Better put that one in too, right? Ready, steady, mums. Half full. I got another failure. This is called Your Conception. Now, yes, this actually was an ejaculating dildo. Call it what it is. It was brilliant. Unfortunately, it's not very easy to defend this particular IP that we developed. So indefensible IP, failure. All right?
I've got so many questions.
There's time. I got more failure. Precipitech, another medtech company, didn't get product market fit. We're going to give that a failure as well. Then we had something called Leadership in Motherhood, which was a fantastic community program that transformed the experience of many mothers' experience of having children and then going back into the workplace. Completely failed to make any money out of that. It just became a community movement, so I'm giving that a failure. And then the last one was actually a super cool tech platform about prolific consumer feedback, but it was before its time. So we brilliantly sold that for £0. It does still exist, but I can't say that that is a success. So there you go. Quite full, that. My 9 ventures, and that's me. Okay, now I'm going to be even more brilliant and funny. Now I've drunk the magic potion. Should I put this away or should I just leave this here? Right. In case you're thinking this is it, just the 9 ventures, I want to ask you to guess something. What do you think is the average age for a successful founder in the UK? Guess. Yeah.
47.
Brilliant guess. 37. Yeah. Yeah, one research does suggest 42. I believe the one that says 45 from Callow School of Management. I'll tell you why, because guess my age. No, actually don't guess my age. In June, I will be 5. So there's plenty more to come. Now, I'm going to clear up my analysis space. Shall I leave it there? Anybody else want to try the delicious tea? I've also been on many founder journeys that aren't mine. And as Simon mentioned, through my career, I've done a lot of things. I'm a coach, and I have coached 300 founders on their own journeys in the last 10 years. And I have learned a lot about performance, resilience, and the link, not just from my own experience, but from theirs. So let's talk about this. Hopefully it will happen. We're going to talk about the founder roller coaster. Has anyone heard of this, the founder roller coaster? Are you ready for this in your experience? Okay, I'm actually going to do a little survey. Has anybody already founded a company? 2 people, right? Okay, well, this is for you. My kids made that. It's nice, isn't it? Has anybody already had scaled and sold a business, had an exit, done a management buyout, perhaps intergenerational transfer? Anybody experienced anything like that? Successfully grown, handed over, and launched a business. That is euphoria, right? Oh, hold on, that's not mine, this one. Euphoria. Has anybody been involved either as a founder or as an early joiner in a business that has achieved the mission, really delivered a transformative impact on the world? Anyone done that? That's also euphoric, right? How about made enough money to be financially free? That's nice as well, right? This can all be yours as a founder. Hurrah, right? And actually, what I'm going to invite you to do before we really get into the failure, and I promise we will get into the failure, is I'd like you to turn to the person next to you and just generate that euphoria. Just imagine that you have founded your company. What success are you going to be standing here and talking about in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, minute each, generate that and listen for the possibility. No telling them it's a rubbish idea. Just this is the exercise. It's huge. So generate your founder euphoria. Okay? Okay, who had fun? Who had fun? Put your hand up if you now more want to be a founder. Who more wants to be a founder? Who more wants to be a founder now you did that? You're supposed to. This is the moment where you're supposed to be going up in the emotional experience. Good, good. All right, I'm sorry, but then I now have this one for you. This is the sad one. Right, how many of you have had such, oh, hang on, I need to change slide. How many of you have had such a major conflict in a team or a business that you founded that the stress, the money has drained into a pit and the business has gone under? How many of you have had a complete and utter change in market demand that means your product doesn't work anymore, is no longer relevant? How many of you have put all your energy and your time into lovingly creating some tech or a product that just didn't work? And then the big one now, has anybody just failed to raise money, failed to raise the investment you need to carry on? And this is a real problem right now with the VC-backed companies that we're seeing. They just can't raise the money. They might be great business, but they're not going through. So this is the other batch of founder stories. This is the flip side to the euphoria. And have you heard of survivor bias? Who gets to tell their story? Elon Musk? Whitney Wolf Heard? Bob, who you've never heard of? You're my Helen. And so it's Elon and Whitney, right? And the Elons and Whitneys. And which story do they tell? Have anyone heard Follow Your Passion? Follow Your Passion. Yeah, my passion is actually singing. I want to be a West End singer. Unfortunately, there's not much demand for mediocre West End singers for rather a niche opportunity. So I'm not going to follow that particular passion. Have you heard another myth that the survivors, the heroes, roll out, which is work hard and you will be rewarded? That's another one, because it's a fair and level playing field, so the winners tell us. So the survivors are the success story, so yeah, whatever. So you want to notice who's telling you the stories and whether they really are representative of the population that you're looking to understand, founders. Quiz time, now the quiz. So question 1, how many startups fail for each success? For good guess.
I'd say like 1 to 10 or 1 to 20.
Yeah. It depends on, you might be talking about ones that scale and achieve exit, that one. The answer is for every successful UK startup, you have 5 that fail. Yeah. Now, failing is actually different than surviving, right? So success is one thing. Success is defined in the context of scaled up, significant exit, reach sustainable level of growth. That's what we're talking about. So that's the 1 to 5 ratio. Question 2, how many founders fail before succeeding? No, I kind of primed you, right? It's actually 54%, which maybe if I hadn't primed you, you might have guessed lower. But 54% have at least one failure before they have achieved success. Now, I also want to draw attention to the fact that it's not just those major documented failures where the business technically shuts, right? It's also the micro failures. It's the things that Edison maybe would call iteration towards a good innovation. So this is the things like, I failed to convert a deal because I said the wrong thing in the negotiation. Ugh. I told the prospective acquirer that I was a bit fed up and ready to quit. I forgot to tell that person who was leaving that they shouldn't take all our manuals and give them to a competitor. I hired this really clever sounding, highly qualified person who then nicked money from our business. So these are the failures as well as the macro ones that we have all the stats about. However, if we can stop being afraid to fail, then we can learn and we can grow. You can down the whole pint. So I'm going to talk a bit more about what we can do with failure, and I have more props. These are the failure balls. They're nice, aren't they? Available on all good, massive dominating the world websites. So these are my failure balls. Yep. I ought to throw one on the floor. Yep, there we go, because they are failure balls. What should we do with them? Well, the first thing is I'm going to deny this one, actually. Just didn't happen. Nothing to see here, okay? This one, I've got a brilliant idea. I'm going to kind of disguise this one. Little hat there. I never meant to achieve whatever this is, actually. I meant to achieve something else. So I'm going to cover that up and just tell a kind of different hero story about that one. So don't look here. This one, I'm going to blame you. Yeah, you can keep that. Oh, look, I found this other one that seems to have like attached itself to my body. I've internalized this one so much, it's like part of my entire identity. Yeah, just keep that there, that's who I am. And actually I have one more as well, which is the one that I just go on and on and on about. And I'm going to talk to you about it and I'm going to analyze it. Would you like to analyze this as well? And then we can analyze it. And do you want to go to another pub and we'll talk about this a bit more? I'll analyze this and really, really think about this to death. I'll bore you all. So what do you think? I like brilliant things to do with failure balls. Has anybody done anything like that? Is it just me? You want to keep it? He's attached to it. Okay. Look, I mean, I've done all of this, right? I've also done a lot of work to get over my dysfunctional tendencies, my human tendencies to handle failure in all those really unhelpful ways. And it was back in 2013 when I first started talking frequently and lecturing on failure as a platform for daring. This is when I had one of my earlier failures. Simon knows well about this. And this was a business called Ready Steady Mums that I mentioned earlier. It was magnificent. We built a tech platform. It was called a virtual personal trainer. Just want to get rid of this disguised failure. Virtual personal trainer. And we refreshed the health and vitality of mothers. It was so fulfilling to do this work. And night and day we were working on it. We raised a crowd fund. Now back in crowd fund? Back in 2012, Cedars was just starting out. They didn't really have a particularly robust legal system. It was like total crazy mess, but we did it. We innovated, we raised the money, we navigated all the confusing stuff. We did a pitch video back in the days when that was like a totally snazzy thing to do. And we built this stellar advisory board. In fact, on that advisory board was the chief scientific officer of a now Cambridge unicorn. We loved it, right? Took care of us. However, we took care of mums. It was great. However, it turned out that we had not a clue about UX. No one really knew what it was back in then. It was kind of fashionable new thing, but we did that. We also had a marketing director and managing director who thought that each other was utterly incompetent, massively fell out, had a major bust up, and we had a market that loved us but had no money. Brilliant. So needless to say, that was not a financially viable business, and we failed. It was devastating, failing that business. You can still hear my passion in that business over a decade later. And not least, I phoned 114 investors. They were all directly invested in the business in those days. That's how crowdfunding worked. And told them about our failure and owned it. It was freaking difficult. Now I can tell you about an epilogue from this story, which is that we gifted the assets, the whole community program, we gifted the assets to the Institute of Health Visiting. And they grew the community program. I was a volunteer there. I actually got an honorary fellowship at the Institute of Health Visiting, and it was really great. I could impress you and I could disguise the failure, right? A little bit like the disguise. But I've totally given that up. That was a different thing. And the truth is that we failed commercially. We lost the investor money. Never scaled, never became sustainable. So failures are rarely clear cut, but all we can do is be honest and balanced about them. and then think about how they make our opportunities for success. Would you like to have a go at that catharsis back in your pairs? Okay, everybody, I need another poll. Hello? Right, let's do it. So I want you to put your hand up if you have now shifted to being more likely to want to be a founder. Who's shifted their opinion from the first poll I did to being more likely to want to be a founder? And who is less wanting to be a founder? Okay. That exercise that you just did then, you are in good company. And for a lot of people, talking like that with permission to own failure is a really important first step in choosing the founder journey. I've had 4 CEOs call me this year so far, 2025, in an absolute midst of failure. They're people that are brilliant founders that have succeeded, have scaled, and stuff is happening. They've had a massive bust up conflict with the board. Investors have lost faith. Their roles become untenable. Their cash runway is weeks away. It's pretty stressful, stuff like that, right? And those people are prepared to be able to deal with that kind of thing because failure is not something that's brand new and in their face for the first time. So you're in good company. Quiz question. What percentage survive more than 3 years of companies that get founded in the UK? Shout. Close. 40%. So 40%. Let's do a bit of a reality check, balance this out. 40%. So there's some odds, right? In fact, I got another one, which I think is actually positive, is what percentage of VC-backed companies deliver the projected returns for investors? This is way higher than I thought. It's 20%. I mean, there's cause for optimism there, right? Yeah. And I also don't think it's all about stats. Why are we even doing all this stuff? Why are we founding companies? What is it that we're trying to achieve? There's a lot more to it than just the data and the stats. And Simon asked me to talk personally. I've shared some failures. And I do like to consider myself a messy success. I actually had a lot of fun last week. I had my 25-year college reunion at Keys. I was at Keys. And then I got sort of connected with a lot of people, and I got asked to be interviewed for the Keys magazine, which is really fun. Because you'd ask me all about all these things I've done in my life. And it was a really positive reminder for me that even though it's a bit of a mess, right? You've seen my 9 ventures, you've seen my career history. I've made money, I've made wealth, I've achieved decent status, as far as I measure it myself. I've really taken care of my health. And I'm really satisfied with the impact that I've had in the work that I've done in all these ventures, as a leader, as a coach for people and communities. Life is good. I spent a good proportion of last summer traveling around Turkey with my 4 kids and my husband. I've just finished second draft of my business fiction book. No one's allowed to see that yet, but lucky me, right? So I'm really committed to giving you the balanced view of a founder that's, I'm not famous for being an exited lobster hand person, as you described it, but I am, in my own measure, I'm successful. And, I've been so stressed trying to pay payroll that I can't sleep. I've been so absorbed with business problems that my marriage has been absolutely on the rocks, right? This is true. I've been totally burnt out. You should have seen me in COVID with my 2 primary school kids and my 2 preschool kids, and I try to keep the business going. And there's been times, but overall, I chose this career for at least the last 50 years of my career of being a founder, and I made this trade-off. And actually, the best I could get as a prop here is this little Batman figure. I asked my kids, does anybody have a Spider-Man toy? And this is all they could find. Anyway, the Spider-Man reference, with great power comes great responsibility. There's the trade-offs, right? And I think about, with being a founder, you get the chance to have these euphoric successes. You get autonomy, you get freedom, you get certain status, if that's what you want. You also have to accept the risk and the responsibility. And that isn't for everyone. You choose that deal. There's a deal there that you can choose. So I thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit now about how to build this founder resilience. And give you some tips from the business point of view, and then we're gonna, all right, just today, who's on the A game today? Who's like on their A game? You're like, today, I got up, I was great, I was my best self, I did a great job of everything. No one. Ugh, this has rather spoiled my plans. I was going to celebrate someone. So the key is to think about being in the resilient state for performance reasons. So you're not resilient people or A-game people. It's about the performance that you bring each day to the things that you're doing. And so we've moved on, the profession has moved on from talking about resilient people, bulletproof people, and instead talking about investing and putting yourself in the resilient state. This means bouncing back, it means thriving. There's a very primitive inbuilt thing in our brains of how we respond to stressor events. And it was developed through our evolutionary history when the kind of stressors that our brains were being put under were like, a tiger's going to eat you right now, yeah? Or you're going to freeze to death in the thunderstorm that's happening tonight if you don't solve this problem immediately now. Or actually, you're going to get ejected from the tribe and starve because you're not, that's the kind of stressors that we learn to deal with. And there's quite a primitive part of our brain that you'll all have heard of, the fight, flight, freeze bit, that does that. And the thing to consider is that nowadays, kind of stressors, right? The board is wasting our time and destroying our value. Like, that's a big stressor, but it's not quite the same as the tiger. I might get fired, right? Yes, that's stressful. It is just stressful. Customer won't renew the contract. It's stressful. Those are stressor events, but they're different than what we're optimized for. So do you want to do the fight, flight, freeze in the face of that stuff? I mean, literally, like that board, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, probably not what you want, the fight response in the board meeting. You might not want the freeze response when you're in a meeting and someone is not liking your decision. You're like, just hide under the table. Like, that's not how you want to respond. And, similarly, flight, when the customer says, I want to look at new terms, you're like, you don't really want that. So what we want to think about is, in the world, the stresses that you are really dealing with, how do you get it's called the amygdala, the bit, the chimp brain, if you've read the chimp paradox, bit of your brain that basically takes over. It's 20 times quicker than your cortex, which is your brilliant reasoning prefrontal bit. And it takes over, and the amygdala goes, I'm in charge. And you get pretty rubbish. So these are the stressor events. And if we talk about how you handle those stressor events, you can look at what you do before the stressors come, what you do in the moment during the stressor event, and then how you come down. And being in the resilient state as a founder depends on you paying attention to all of those pieces. And of course, then you get business performance, which is the prize we're all looking for. So if we think about before, you might be able to bring to mind now some of the stresses that really get you. Your heart racing, blood's pumping, all that stuff, your amygdala takes over. If you can think about removing or mitigating those, that has got to be the easiest first step, right? So if I take the example, the board is wasting my time, how can I mitigate that? I might say, well, I'm going to set some expectations with the board. I'm going to communicate differently. Then I don't have to have the fight, flight, freeze because I've removed the stressor. And I think one of the things we see with founders is that because they are so resourceful and energetic and unstoppable, that they often, this kind of just get out the way of the bus idea doesn't occur to them. So keep that in mind. There's sometimes a very simple thing you can do before. Now, briefly to touch on during, you want to have your eyes wide open to what is going to happen to you in stressor events, and then do all the things you can to have what we call cognitive flexibility. So how can you see a situation differently? I think I do have some ideas about this. Yeah. So here's some of the things that you can do in the moment. Look at yourself from the outside. Breathe. Oh, that's rocket science. Very good one, though. Positive self-talk and mantras. Katy, you can do this. Distraction. One of my favorite recent ones is I was doing a talk online, and I found out that the people that I was on the that were on the panel that I was facilitating were all super Sir this and Dame this and whatever, right? So I kind of got myself into a bit of a flap about it. And I went and I watched a little YouTube episode. Just what happened to come up was, have I got news for you? And I had myself laughing till I was crying. And then I went quickly onto the call, ready to facilitate the panel, and I'd completely shifted my frame. So distraction can be very clever. Power stances. I mean, you know more about this. Whatever. Brilliant idea that I heard recently on this is that if you have long hair, you don't want to do that whole like really powerful thing in a meeting. You can just go like that. Well, you should probably do that if you don't have long hair. This is a way to put me in a power stance there. That's the power stance, and I'm not looking like I'm being super aggressive. You can like. So a few ideas. Take a break, obviously. Now, remind yourself why you're doing it is actually my favorite one. All founders have a mission. Often that mission gets shunted to the side when they're really coming at you. So I love to come back to go, my mission is transforming leadership to unlock innovation and make a difference in the world. God, when you're looking like that, suddenly it's like, okay, fine, I can deal with you being a little bit pithy with me in the board meeting. And then I remember I said there's the before, during, and after. So if we look at afterwards, there is a really chronic problem in our society at the moment of coming down from stressor events. So in the primitive examples I talked about, you'd get attacked by a tiger, and then probably the tiger, you would see it leave. So there's a signal to you that the stressor event has passed. You might see the sun comes out after the thunderstorm. So there's much more sensory input to tell your body, it's okay, come back down. What happens often now is we get stuck in high alert. The awful Zoom meeting happens. Everyone goes off and you're sat there with the, imagining what's happening. So there can be a real problem here with this toxic high alert. So taking the actions that will bring you down and have you be able to restore that energy is really important. How many of you would say that you have had a good night's sleep more than half of the last week nights? Well done, you minority. What about anybody who, would you score yourself, say, a 7 out of 10 for diet in the last week? Who'd give yourself a 7 or higher for what you've eaten? Well done, you minority, a different minority. How many people have done the three times exercise in the last week? We're scoring slightly higher. Got some work to do. So you know this stuff, right? It's about doing it. And I've got one more tip on resilience, and that is around the mindset. So if I was to say to you, hey everybody, let's have a lot of self-care, you might be, oh, okay, that sounds really nice. Let's talk about self-care. What will then happen is that you will then, if you're a founder, you'll go, oh, but this really bad thing is happening. So whatever, throw that out the window. And that's what actually happens. Luckily, we have another framing mindset that you can choose to take, which is that you see yourself as a founder in your business as a finite, valuable, and cherished resource. You look at yourself like that, and the business only has that. And if you start to think about deploying yourself in that way, you're deploying a resource, and that resource needs to be on its A game when it matters, and not the B game 24/7. And that mindset, we find, does work. Founders then do start to prioritize the things that actually have them well in the resilient state, performing and achieving these kind of enormous successes. So focus on the business. Resilient founders then through embracing failure. Now, embracing failure, handling your stressors, investing in resilience, and this euphoric success is possible. I just would invite you to choose the deal, with your eyes wide open. And if you choose that founder journey, I wish you outrageous success in unlocking innovation and making a difference in the world. Thank you.